It's a great time of year for baseball fans with another season fast approaching. And we're going to talk a little baseball with a guy who has written a terrific book about the sport and what baseball means to so many of us. The book is this one, Backyards to Ballparks, more personal stories from the stands and beyond. And the author is Eric C. Gray. Eric, welcome. How are you?
I'm fine, Chet. Thank you so much for having me.
Well, Eric, this is actually your second baseball book. The first was Bases to Bleachers, and now we have Backyards to Ballparks. You're obviously a lifelong baseball fan, but what inspired you to do these books?
I was at a game. We live in San Francisco. I was at a Giants game with my wife and my daughter and a friend. And, the pace of baseball just enables you to talk with the people that you're with, talk with strangers, or just think. And I just was looking at this at the field, and I had the question came into my mind, which I posed to them. What's your favorite moment at a game? What was your favorite memory? And then I just began asking a whole bunch of friends, and I asked them to ask their friends. But what really sparked it, I made a list of my the favorite events I'd ever been to, which is, being at Mickey Mantle's retirement day and the game I was at spring training when a photographer took a picture of my kids with Dusty Baker. But when I made this list with people, it was just a list. I didn't, it was just a list of events. There was no story. And when I started to ask my friends about their stories, I asked a friend of mine who likes baseball less than anybody I've ever known, just to give him a hard time. And he answered me, and his story was so personal and wonderful that I knew what I had to do, which is to write this book.
Wow. Well, I did read about half of the book on Saturday. And what's great is that it's not a novel that you have to, sit down and read each chapter in succession. It's a collection of stories that hundreds of contributors have, given their stories, their personal experiences with baseball, first MLB game, memorable interactions with players. And my favorite chapter, and I know you like this yourself, the bats and balls and gloves that bind family and baseball. Explain what that particular chapter is all about. I got teary-eyed reading a few of those stories.
In my first book, which is called Bases to Bleachers, there was a chapter that was called Generation to Generation, Family in Baseball. And that was one of, to me, the really core chapters of the book. And I knew for the second book, I needed to repeat that. Obviously, all different stories and a different title. But that's just an amazing chapter that really summarizes to me why baseball is just so critical to so many people. It's the passing down of the memories and the stories from one generation to the next.
Well, you had a contribution, as a matter of fact, from Brett Boone about his family, including his dad, former Philly Bob Boone, and especially about his grandfather, Ray Boone. Man, that one got to me. That was a great little piece.
It was yes, very remarkable, and I'm very grateful. The book is not populated with stories of famous people,
Right.
but I was very grateful to be able to get the story from Brett Boone.
Oh, I should mention, while enjoying the chapter about fans' memories of their first ball games, this one guy was recalling his first one, a Phillies Braves game at Connie Mack Stadium in 1966. Tony Cloninger pitching for the Braves, Hank Aaron and the Phillies, Richie Allen going to combined 0 for 8. And then I saw the guy's name at the end, and it was your friend and mine, Matt Goldberg, who wrote it. How about that?
Yeah, one of the amazing, unexpected results of this book has been the friendships that I've made. And I'm not using the word friendship lightly. I mean, Matt has become a very, very close friend of mine. I actually have a story in his Rings of Kindness.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah.
And it's about how people helped me in the process of writing my books, people that I had no reason to think or expect would ever do anything for me. And they just stepped up and did so.
Yeah, Matt's a good guy, and I have his book, but I haven't read it yet. So sorry, Matt, I will get to it, I promise. Well, while there are 20 chapters or so in this book, I assume about the same number in the first book, there are hundreds of stories from contributors. How the heck did you solicit all these stories and compile them? I mean, there are terrific stories from a lot of contributors.
Yeah, so I mentioned to you that when I first had this idea, I started to ask people, and I'll try to be brief about this. I sent out an email to about 30 people, and I got that email from my friend who doesn't like baseball, and I knew what I had to do. So then I started asking more friends. I asked my friends to ask friends. And then wherever you were, if you had some kind of baseball paraphernalia on or something that indicated you were a baseball fan, I would ask you, I would tell you about this book that I was writing. Do you have a story to contribute? And from New York originally and live in San Francisco, I had a lot of Giants and Mets and Yankee stories and, Dodgers and that kind of thing. But I really wanted to broaden, the scope of where they were coming from. So I joined some Facebook groups, and that's when it really took off. And by the time of the first book, I had 1,200 stories and from 14 different countries. How I put it together, for a while, I had no idea how it was going to happen. And I'm a little reluctant to use this term. It just kind of happened organically, right? At some point, it became clear that if there would be a chapter about first games. There would be a chapter about being with your mom or your dad. There would be a chapter about catching a ball or not. That's actually in the second book. Why it's not in the first, I don't know, and it doesn't matter. But some stories just very naturally fit into very specific categories. I mean, I remember sitting in my living room with like 25 piles of paper, each representing a specific chapter. And I mean, that's how it all came together. And it was a lot of fun. I mean, the only nerve-wracking thing about it was which stories to not include, because after 1,200 stories, you would need a Sherpa to carry a book around that big. And so I narrowed. The first book has 275 stories from probably about 265 contributors. I mean, the one that just amazes me is a guy from Ghana. I mean, Ghana, right? This guy was walking to work one day, and he sees some kids playing with a stick and a ball. He had no idea what that was, and now he's a high school baseball coach for men and women.
Again, we're talking about the new book right now, Backyards to Ballparks. Hey, like me, you're a lifelong baseball fan, and we've seen a lot of changes in the sport over the last 60 years or so. What stands out as something that you like as far as the changes, and what do you hate? What do you not like about what's changed?
I think all of us talk a lot about the rules changes that have occurred in the last several years. I personally, and I thought about this a lot, how to answer it, because my knee-jerk reaction as a traditionalist is to say I don't like them. And I realized that I don't necessarily like them philosophically, but I don't mind them practically. I'm not the kind of guy who goes to a game and says, "Oh God, this is too long. We got to go." I mean, when we bring people to a game that have never been to a game and they say, "How long does it last?" I mean, you know what the answer to that is. It lasts as long as it lasts.
Right.
That said, it's not like I enjoy being in a 3-hour and 45-minute 2-1 game. I mean, sometimes it's a little bit much. So it's kind of, I can answer your question, I suppose, by saying it's both things. I've come to accept them and think that most of the rules changes, while I don't agree with them. For example, I love the fact that a relief pitcher has to throw to 3 batters now, right?
Me too. Yeah.
I don't agree with it because I think it's taken away the manager's prerogative and strategy. And it's kind of like you use all your relief pitchers by the 9th inning and you're going to extra innings. Well, that's too bad on you. You have to deal with the consequences. That said, being at a game, and we sit near what used to be the visitors' bullpen, but that, for safety reasons, outfield, what pitcher after pitcher, batter after batter, it got long and annoying. So I think that's the answer to your question. It's the same thing. I don't like them philosophically, but practically, I like them. I will never, ever, ever accept the ghost runner at second base to start off.
Oh,
I will never.
You're not alone. A
Never.
lot of people feel that way, including my radio partner,
Never.
Bill Furman. He'll be thrilled to hear you say that. Hey, I want to talk a little music with you, Eric, but first, tell folks where they can find this cool book, and do you have any signings or appearances coming up?
I do. I have one in Villanova, actually, on April 7th. That's at 1:00. It's I'd rather not give out the address if it's okay, because it's a private home, but I would like to give people my email address, how they can contact me. My email address is Eric, ERIC, baseball stories, long word, but fairly simple. It's stories, plural. Also find me on Messenger or contact me through my website, basestobleachers.com. It's going to be what I do in my talks. It's going to be at 1:00. It'll be done by 4:00 so she can watch the Phillies game, because she was very, very adamant about that. And what I do is I talk about the book and how it came about and how I obtained stories a lot. And then, of course, I read a number of stories. And you could also, if you're any of your viewers are curious about would I like to do this, you could look at my YouTube channel, Bases to Bleachers. I've been reading and talking about some of the stories.
All right. Well, Eric, as I said, big music fan here. You are too. You're an administrator for a Facebook page called Obscure, mostly Song of the Day. And I believe you told me you're hoping to do a music book similar to your baseball ones. Is that true?
That's absolutely correct. I mean, I haven't started full in on it, but I probably got over 100 stories, and it's going to be the same kind of concept. I'm just a believer in the stories of every man, right? That's Jackson Brown reference. I'm just a big believer in the stories that the everyday person tells. They don't have to be stories from famous people, and it's going to be stories about being at a great concert, but why, right? Not just I was at a great concert. There's got to be why. What made it special? What did it do for you? It's like my baseball books. It's going to be more the personal element. It's like saying I was at Hank Aaron's 715th home run. If that's all you tell me, well, that's great for you. But there's nothing about that. There's nothing compelling that would make somebody want to read that story, right? And the music book will be about the same thing. If you saw the Beatles in the Cavern Club, and that's all you tell me, well, there's no story there. But getting to know a guy who was there for the rooftop concert, well, that's a whole different thing, and how he describes what happened. So yeah, I can't wait to do this this book.
Oh, as I do, you occasionally ask people for lists of favorite songs by a particular artist, and you recently asked people for their 20 favorite songs of all time. I tried to put that list together, but I kept beating myself up over what should and shouldn't be included because it changes from day to day for me. So I gave up, just too daunting.
And my wife is exactly the way you are. She's not a list maker. She said she gave it a shot, and then she said every song from Blue, Joni Mitchell's Blue. I said, some people enjoy the challenge of doing it, recognizing that it may be different tomorrow. Some people just can't do it. Some people have to just let it be. That's my number one song, Let It Be.
I got you. All right, Eric, before we wrap up, I'm going to put you on the spot and play a little game of Fast Five. Now, the only rule, keep your answers brief. So let's give it a shot. Number one, who is your all-time favorite San Francisco Giant?
Matt Cain.
Okay, I have to ask why.
Matt Cain isn't the sexy choice, right? It's
Yeah.
Ted Lincecum or Madison Bumgarner. Matt Cain was a guy who went and did his work. He got no support. He never blamed anybody. Matt Cain, and there's a story in my book about how my wife and I watched his perfect game from our den, and our daughter was in the press elevator, and our son was in DC, and how this game did what baseball always does, which is keep us together.
Wow. Number two, since we are a Philly area operation, who is was your favorite Philly to watch play?
I didn't see them play very often. I remember having a real interest for Johnny Callison.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know why. Maybe I liked his name. I remember he had a home run in the All-Star game in '64. Yep. I liked Tony Taylor. I don't know why, but there's a story in my book about a guy who his encounter with Tony Taylor at a game. So these are some of the names. And Richie Allen, how could you not?
Yeah. He was my favorite back in the day, Richie Dick Allen. Number three, regarding music, my first concert was Kiss in 1976. What was yours?
Rascals, 1966 at Plainview High School. Excuse me, the Young Rascals in 1966. Followed soon after by seeing Steppenwolf.
Oh, nice. Number four, give me a band or artist that you've never seen but wish you had, and you can't say the Beatles.
I think about this a lot. I would say would either be the Hollies or the Pretenders.
Ooh, I've seen the Pretenders. Very good.
Big Hollies fan, big British Invasion fan. They started my journey with music.
Number five, finally, what is the best baseball movie, or your favorite anyway?
The obvious answer would be Field of Dreams. I would say that, or possibly Sandlot.
Good choices. Good choices. All right, Eric. Again, the book is Backyards to Ballparks. I got it. Find it, buy it. And where can people find you on social media?
I have a Facebook page, Bases to Bleachers. They can find me on my own personal page. Thanks for plugging the book. The book is available online. If anybody wants to get a signed copy from me, it's the same cost, except, of course, it'd be shipping costs. So if that doesn't matter and you'd like to get a signed copy with a long note, not just a signature, you can contact me on that email address, eric.baseballstories@gmail, or through my Facebook page or through my YouTube page. It's there.
As I had a hunch it would be, this was a lot of fun. Eric C. Gray, thanks, my friend.
Thank you, Chet. Appreciate it.